boys and girls. I am here with Goldie Girl. She just woke up from a little nap. She's been playing in her ball. And I said, hey, Goldie Girl, it's time to read Humphrey chapter 8, Double Trouble. And she got out of her sleeping hut and she went squeak, squeak, squeak. Very excited to hear what finally happens for chapter 8. I know it's been a few days since we read chapter 7. There she is. There's my Goldie Girl. She's so excited. She's like, oh boy, chapter 8, can't wait. She's also like, wait a second, I think it's daytime and I'm supposed to be sleeping. So she's she's a little confused. She's like, whoa, waking me up for? So, all right, I'm going to put her back in her cage because I can't hold her and the book, but hopefully she can listen and it might even put her to sleep. This is a good bedtime story for her. So I'm going to let you guys say goodbye to Goldie Girl and I will be right back. All right, Goldie's back in her cage. I just gave her an apple to snack on, so she is content for a little bit. So that was her little treat for coming out of her cage and being a participant in our story time. She gets a little apple treat. Chapter 8 in Trouble, according to Humphrey, is called Double Trouble. Trouble rhymes with double. Believe me, I was thinking about double trouble that night. Art's good grade on the math test was cause for celebration. Art becoming friends with Paul was cause for celebration. Seth sitting still, or at least not popping up out of his chair every few seconds. That's right, Goldie. She's liking her apple. Was cause for celebration. But I had not done one thing to help Miranda, whom I had gotten into trouble, and now Mandy clearly was having some kind of problem I didn't understand. Lately, I'd been spinning more to keep my mind off my friend's troubles. I was spinning so much I wasn't eating all the food I had stored away in various places in my cage. All hamsters know that it's a good idea to have some food stashed away in case of emergency. Goldie definitely does that. Ooh, my nose is itchy today. Og, being a classroom pet may not be an important job, but it's not an easy one either, I squeaked to my neighbor, because we've got to try to keep all our friends out of trouble. Boing, boing, he twanged back at me. He's a very wise frog. I'm worried about Miranda, I breathlessly explained without stopping my wheel. Boing! Og did a giant leap. And I'm worried about Mandy, I said. Boing, boing! Og jumped up and down twice. I knew he was worried about Mandy as well. And I can't think of one single thing to do that would help either one of them. Can you? From Og, silence. This was not a good sign. I got out my notebook and decided to make a plan. To make a plan, it helps to make a list. So I wrote, plan to help Miranda, number 1. Oh, what do you think? What do you think you should do to help Miranda, Goldie Girl? She went back into her. She had her apple snack and now she's back in her sleeping hut. I think this story is definitely putting her to sleep. I stared at that number 1 and stared some more. No matter how hard I stared at it, I couldn't think of anything to write. The only way I could help Miranda would be to prove to Mrs. Brisbane and the whole class that she didn't leave my door unlocked. And the only way I could prove that was to let everyone see that my lock didn't lock. Which meant that someone would put a new lock on my cage and I'd never be able to get out again. I wouldn't be able to have any more exciting adventures. And more important, it would be a lot harder for me to help my friends. I closed my notebook and went into my sleeping hut. I couldn't sleep because every time I closed my eyes, I saw Miranda's face in front of me. I couldn't stand that for long, so I crawled out of my sleeping hut and went over to the side of the cage closest to Og. I tried to make a plan, but I didn't get far. Og sat there like the lumpy, bumpy frog he is and blinked his eyes. That is, the only plan I can think of would mean I'd be locked in my cage forever. Og sat as motionless as the rock he was sitting on. Well, you must have some ideas. I was practically pleading with him now. He didn't even look at me. But I'd learned an interesting fact. I'd learned a fact in science class that frogs can see all around them without moving their heads because they have 360-degree vision. That's all around. That's a big circle. It's 360 degrees. That's good because they don't have much in the way of necks. I know you can see me, Og, and I know you can hear me, even though you don't have any ears that I can see. Are you ignoring me? It appeared that he was. Are you trying to think of a plan too? Og jumped up and let out a very loud boing. Oh, I was so startled. I jumped backward and hit my head on my wheel. Our strange conversation, which to humans would sound like a golden hamster squeaking and a green frog twanging, ended abruptly. Abruptly means right away. Ended abruptly when the door handle rattled, the lights came on, and Aldo pushed his cart into the room. I'm back, Aldo said. His greeting didn't sound as warm and cheery as usual. In fact, he parked his cart in front of my cage and let out a loud yawn. Sorry, fellas, I'm kind of tired tonight. I've been studying and writing papers and working, and you don't want to hear about my problems, do you? Yes, 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 I squeaked, because if your friends won't listen to your problems, who will? Aldo pulled up a chair and took out his dinner. He yawned again. I've been working and studying more than I'm sleeping, I guess. I'm beat. After he chewed his sandwich in silence for a few minutes, he opened his bag. Whoa, I must be tired. I almost forgot, Humphrey. Here's a tomato. Thanks to Aldo, amato.
A little rhyme there.
It was a perfect plump cherry tomato, the kind that usually makes my whiskers wiggle with joy. But I'd been thinking so much about my problems, I didn't feel much like eating. Thanks, I squeaked. Aldo didn't notice that I was unusually quiet because he was yawning again. Guys, I think I'll take a short nap. I'll work twice as fast if I can just rest my eyes for a few minutes, right? To my amazement, Aldo rolled up his jacket, sat in a chair, and using the jacket as a pillow, put his head on the table and closed his eyes. He was sound asleep in a matter of seconds. He really must have been tired.
Wow.
It was quiet in room 26, with only the tick, tick, tick of the clock, which I couldn't hear in the daytime, counting off each second. Do you think he'll sleep for long? I squeaked to Og. After all, he has work to do. Og dove into the water and went for a swim. Big help he was. Aldo looked peaceful dozing there. Still, the hands of the clock kept moving round and round. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. At one point, Aldo moved. Good, he was waking up. But instead, he rolled his head to the other side and kept on sleeping. Og, how many rooms do you think he has to clean? I asked. After all, Aldo had a big responsibility getting all the rooms in Longfellow School clean each night. Classrooms have a way of getting messy with squashed crayons, crushed chalk, and lots of scuff marks on the floor. Og splashed again as he climbed back onto his rock. When I glanced over, I saw he was staring down at Aldo, too. I wouldn't want him to lose his job. I knew how terrible Miranda felt when she lost her job. Og let out a big, twangy boing. Aldo didn't move a muscle. He was really sound asleep. I checked the clock. Aldo had been sleeping for 1 hour. That's 60 minutes. That's a long time to take a nap. At this rate, I wasn't sure he could get his job done, at least not as well as he usually did it. We'd better wake him, I squeaked to Og. I took my friend's silence to mean yes. On the count of 3. Okay, Augie. 1, 2, 3. Og and I let loose with a series of boings and squeaks that was quite amazing, even alarming. Aldo remained fast asleep.
How could you be asleep when there's literally squeak?
How else could one small hamster and one small frog wake up our sleeping friend? Then I remembered something that was bad. However, in this case, it might turn out to be good. Once, when I was riding the bus home with Lower Your Voice AJ, me and Martin Bean, the bus bully, told him to be quiet. When AJ kept talking, Martin took some paper, wadded it up in a little ball, and put it in his mouth to wet it. Ew. Then he threw it and hit AJ in the neck. Yuck, AJ had said, rubbing his neck. Ew. That wad of wet paper made an impression and gave me an idea for a plan. I gathered together some of my bedding material, which is shredded paper, and tried to mold it into a ball. Being a clean and sanitary hamster, I wasn't about to put the stuff in my mouth. Instead, I went to my water bottle and tapped it a few drops. I tapped it so a few drops trickled down onto the paper until I was able to shape it into a ball. I worked it between my paws until it was as round and smooth as a baseball. I went to the side of my cage and looked down at Aldo, who was sleeping peacefully. Then I had a terrible thought. I was a small hamster after all. How could I be sure I could throw the ball so it would hit Aldo on the neck and wake him up? I'd have to throw it with all my might. Even though I was strong from spinning on my wheel and climbing ladders and tree branches, I was tiny compared to Aldo. Then I remembered gravity. Mrs. Brisbane had explained gravity to us in science. She is an excellent teacher. Gravity is a force that pulls things toward the ground. It's the reason we don't float above the ground all the time, which might be fun for a while, but not all the time. I realized I would have the power of gravity on my side. The ball would naturally go down, and if I aimed it correctly and put my full force behind it, I should be able to wake Aldo up. I stopped to think about what I was doing. It was wrong for Martin to throw that spitball at AJ. Could it be wrong to do the same thing to help Aldo keep his job? I explained my mission to Og. I'm ready to fire on Aldo and wake him up. Do you think it's a good idea? Boing, 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 boing. I think he was agreeing. Making sure I could clear the bars on my cage, I concentrated. That's deep thought. I concentrated on a small portion of Aldo's neck and let loose. The ball slammed downward directly toward Aldo's neck. I crossed my paws, hoping this would work. Bingo! That paper ball hit him square in the neck. His hand went up to rub the spot, and best of all, his eyes opened. He mumbled sleepily. He sat up and glanced at the clock. Mamma mia, I've been asleep for an hour. Aldo leaped to his feet and grabbed his broom. I thought I'd just nap for a few minutes. You guys should have woke me. If I lose this job, I won't be able to afford to go to school. Sometimes humans don't give credit where credit is due, but all I cared about was Aldo keeping his job. Phew, I'm going to have to hustle to get all my work done. I do feel better, though. Aldo pushed his broom around the room like an artist painting a masterpiece. We saw a great film showing a famous artist at work. I like seeing movies in class. He missed the spitball on the floor, but at least he didn't notice it. Phew! He finished cleaning the room in half his usual time. Gotta run, guys. Catch you tomorrow night, he said as he raced out the door with his cart. Og and I sat in silence for a while, listening to the clock tick, tick, ticking away. I'm sure glad that worked, I finally squeaked. Og jumped so high, he hit the cover of his glass house and almost popped the top. Boing,
Wow,
boing.
that's high, really.
Yeah, he twanged. For once, I knew exactly what he meant. Even though I'd kept Aldo out of trouble, I still had a lot more work to do. Longfellow custodian attends local college. Aldo Amato says the extra hours of studying will be well worth it once he becomes a teacher. The Humphreyville Herald.
I like your funny voice.
Oh, I'm glad we got to read chapter 8. I hope you all have a great Wednesday working at home, boys and girls. See you tomorrow in class. Bye.